Guys, welcome back. Before we get started, I just want to let you all know that I'm putting together another model showcase video. Showcase feels a little self-aggrandizing for my painting skills, but because that was fun. I like showing off my work, even though it's not the best. And those of you who watched it seem to enjoy it, so if you haven't watched the first one, it was my Wood Elf models, so I'd love it if you would go check it out if you're interested. Anyways, let's get on topic, talking about Chaos Space Marines and the Abyssal Crusade. The 37th millennium saw 30,000 Space Marines embark on a redemptive crusade into the Eye of Terror. Barely half returned, and many of those left behind were horribly altered, caught in thrall to the very forces they had sought to purge. After the ecclesiarchal purges of 321 of the 37th millennium, Saint Basilius the Elder was ascendant. His Puritas divisions included several chapters of Space Marines, each of which was extremely fierce in their vigilance. Wherever a mutant or cultist was found, an execution would immediately follow, regardless of age, sex, station, or circumstance. For once, the ecclesiarchy worked in concert with the Inquisition and the Adeptus Astartes across the entire Segmentum Solar, making it mandatory for the populace to inform on anyone they suspected to bear the spore of chaos. Those few civil liberties the imperial citizenry had left were stripped back even further, and countless false allegations were made. But the tactic was ultimately effective. The incidence of insurrection dropped to almost nil. The tides of change. Then came Warp Storm Dionys. The wrenching twist in reality caused warp rifts over dozens of systems, and its echoes rippled along the spiral arms of the galaxy as it raged through the Empyrean. Records of mutation and cultist activity quadrupled overnight. Worst yet, it was not only the citizens who were affected by the sudden influx of chaos. Many of the Space Marine chapters with home worlds in the path of the warp storm found that the secret imperfections in their gene seed were writ large upon their new recruits, giving rise to a wave of disturbing manifestations, both physical and psychological. When the ecclesiarchy heard of this sinister turn of events, Saint Basilius demanded that all those chapters of the Adeptus Astartes whose home worlds had been touched by the warp storm be rendered unto his judgment. Such was the Elder's influence with the High Lords of Terra that within a year this had come to pass. After a series of stringent tests and prognostications, hundreds of chapters were deemed unaffected by the warp storm. No less than 30 were found wanting. The Judged, as these fallen chapters came to be known, volunteered for a redemptive crusade. The most militant of their number demanded the right to purify their tainted flesh in the fires of battle, to make a noble end from tragic misfortune. To the surprise of his closest advisors, Saint Basilius agreed to their proposal. He saw it fitting to send the accused into the Eye of Terror, taking the fight for the Imperium's future to the demon worlds inhabited by the Chaos Space Marines. A representative from each of the doomed chapters held an emergency council of dismay to discuss the proposed crusade. After scant hours of debate, they acquiesced to Basilius's demands, for they believed that martyrdom was preferable to an existence of suspicion and doubt. The last few days of 321 of the 37th millennium saw a solemn procession of strike cruisers and battle barges pass through the Cadian Gate into the Eye of Terror, relay systems dormant and heraldic colors obscured by black mag plates. One by one, the chapters of the Judged disappeared into the iridescent dust nebula that surrounded the eye, flickering out of reach from Cadia's astropaths within a single night. Less than an hour after the Judge had made transition into the eye, a war fleet of misshapen battlecraft encrusted with the sigils of chaos emerged from the dust clouds to intercept them. Torpedoes ripped open hulls and blew out docking bays, and lance fire crackled through the ether to stab through the leviathans of the Imperial fleet. Soon, the battle raged so fiercely that all cohesion amongst the Judged fleet was lost. The sheer amount of destruction meted out caused a great turmoil in the warp, and the fabric of space-time itself began to tear open. Just as the Chaos Fleet retreated, the ships of the Judge were scattered to the furthest corners of the eye. An ill-fated odyssey. Were they ever to be committed to parchment, the journeys of the Judged could fill the great Euclidean library twice over. Each tale has a sorry ending, for one does not venture into the eye without courting grievous misfortune. On the pestilent world of Anathrax, the Iron Drake's chapter made planetfall in force, smashing through bulbous fungus forests of giant puffy-eyed heads that coughed and sneezed gray mucus onto the space marines deploying from their drop pods. The Iron Drakes fought bravely, but one by one they were brought low. Though their respirators filtered the air of disease, many of the Space Marines found their power armor cracked and laid open by the torrent of bolter fire leveled upon them by the hidden Plague Marines. By the time a full half of the chapter had bulged, screaming out of their armor to become fungus trees themselves, the rest were ready to surrender, pledging their souls to Nurgle. Thus did the Iron Drakes become the Grey Death, ready and willing to spread their plague across the stars. The ever-vigilant Sentinels chapter quickly found signs of Chaos Space Marine infestation, making planetfall upon the fleshy crust of Oliensis. Only when their long-ranged scans of a nearby mountain range revealed the topography of a human face did they realize the demon world they had invaded took the form of a morbidly obese man curled into a fetal ball. Putting their doubts to one side, the battle brothers of the Sentinels hunted down and exterminated the goat-headed hedonists that frolicked between the tree-trunk hairs soaring up into the fiery skies above. The ecstatic death bleats of the cultists did not go unheard. From the planet's yawning bores came gaudily painted Slaneshi noise marines, their sonic weapons splitting the night air with blood-curdling salvos. The Sentinels crashed headlong into battle with their outlandish foes, but as more and more flesh worshippers emerged to join the fray, the planet itself stirred, awoken by the din. Lake-sized eyes gleaming, Oliensis shoveled the combatants into its waterfall gullet with a hand the size of a tectonic plate. By the time the Sentinels were regurgitated back into reality, they were unrecognizable as loyalists. They had been refashioned into the cannibalistic Corpus Brethren, every bit as deranged as the Slanesh-worshipping heretics they now fought beside. Meanwhile, across the void Galathamar, the Knights Excelsior fought desperately to make sense of their new environment. The planet of Temporia was a mind-bending contradiction of cog plateaus, helical manufactoria, and spiraling stairways that clanked and span around the newcomers, as if they were the epicenter of the world they had invaded. At first glance, the knights thought the beasts that crested each of the towering buildings were no more than drake-headed gargoyles. But the creatures unfolded themselves from the spires and roofs and plummeted toward the Space Marines, their maw-mounted weapons spitting fire. Yet more demon engines clattered from the sweltering forges of each cog complex as red-hot lava rained upwards toward the intruders in defiance of physical law. Covered in the oily blood of demon engines, the Knights Excelsior hacked a path back to their ships, but their escape was far from secure. The creator of the demon beasts, Warpsmith Valadrak, allowed the knights to re-embark upon their strike cruisers before setting loose an electricity-eating demon fashioned from tortured machine spirits. With the controls of their dormant warships rebelling against them, and their advanced war gear pulsing with static, the Space Marines were overrun, seized up in the piston-driven claws of Temporia's demon engines, and thrust into the red-hot soul forges of Valadrak's fortress. Less than a year later, the renegade magma hounds were seen abroad in the Cadian system, their number almost double that of previous sightings. Upon the crone world of Belial IV, the Brothers of the Anvil scoured the tumbled spires of the original Eldar Empire, only to be brought to battle and eventually captured by the Xenos Capellites that searched the ancient planet for arcane artifacts. After a year of nightmarish ordeals in the Comorite arenas, the broken remains of the Brothers of the Anvil slaughtered their way back into real space, where they killed every living thing they found. Chapter after chapter fell to the perils of the Eye, for the Abyssal Crusade had entered a hell from which very few emerge unchanged. A bitter redemption. The tales go on, though few outside the mysterious Black Library have any idea of their extent. The adepts of the Administratum outright deny any link between the loss of the Judged and the increased frequency of Chaos Space Marine raids thereafter. All that is known is that almost 800 years after the Abyssal Crusade began, the remnants of some of the Judged chapters returned from the warp. They could barely contain their fury when they were detained by agents of the Inquisition and tested for the taint of chaos. As they passed every test, a horrible truth came to light. Saint Basilius still lived, and the testimony of Convac Lan, chapter master of the Vorpal Swords chapter, revealed him as a false idol, guilty of sending innocents into the jaws of damnation. The Vorpal Swords led the other survivors, blazing with righteous anger, to penetrate the defenses of Basilius's palace. They found the unaccountably ancient saint, and finally revealed Basilius's true nature as an apostle of chaos. Basilius and thousands of his followers were slain, his shrines destroyed, and every relic and tome of his creed burned, as if he had never existed. Even so, the full extent of his corruption and the reach of his influence has never been discovered. list here of excommunicated chapters. Post-Abyssal Crusade, the 37th millennium, appended to the Grimoire of Hereticus of the 35th millennium. So first I will give you the Adeptus Astartes chapter title, then I will give you the Excommunicat designation, which will be their Chaos name. The Lectors of Ixis became the Oracles of Change. The Knights Excelsior became the Magma Hounds. The Invictors became the Unhallowed. The Lion Guard became the Death Shadows. The Graven Fists became the Twisted Blades. The Lances of Taros became the Lords of Decay. The Blades Eternal have a pending Excommunicat designation. The Brothers of the Anvil became the Deathmongers. The Sigillites became Malefactors. Viridian Consuls became the Broken. Altar Brethren became Iconoclasts. Kind of a weird name for, it's totally appropriate, but it's a weird thing to call yourself. Vengeance Chapter. The Fly became the Fly Lords. Sentinels became Corpus Brethren. Chorus of Eltane are marked as Martyr Extremis, which I'm assuming means destroyed completely. Tempest Legion became the Revelation of Gore. Bronze Gorgons became Crystal Wyverns. Prophets of Mercury are also designated Martyr Extremis. Argent Hammers became Talons of Anathrax. Iron Drakes became the Grey Death. Illustrians became the Black Psalm. Doom Legion became Vectors of Pox. Serpents of Light became Predator Legion. Spears of Olympus became Blood Lords. Clerics of Steel became Invocators. Star Griffins became Sons of Midnight. Fists of Ulcus are designated as Perdidas, which is a word I don't know. Justicars became the Fractured. Sanctors of Terra became the Blighted Claw. And Crusaders of Dorn became Brotherhood of Letha. And that is where we're going to bring this video to a close. If you liked it, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And please check out the Wood Elf Model Showcase. And look for Orcs and Goblins coming up. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.